All right, so please take a seat so we can also kickstart with the next session. All right, so after the first panel that we also heard a bit more about the policy landscape in Europe, now in this session we are going to focus mainly on what we have achieved through over the past 4.5 years in the two projects, in REGREEN and Clearing House. So we are going to focus on how we worked on regreening cities with nature-based solutions in Europe and China. And for this, I would like to invite Alberto Pozza, who was the project advisor at Unit 3 for Biodiversity, Circularity, Economy and Environment at the Research Executive Agency of the European Commission. Alberto was also the policy officer for both Clearing House and REGREEN, so please, Alberto, have a seat. I would also like to invite on stage Marianne Zandersen, the project coordinator of REGREEN. Marianne is also senior researcher at Aarhus University in Denmark. We will have today online Professor Zhao Bin. Professor Zhao Bin is teaching at the School of Life Sciences at Fudan University. And of course, Dr. Rick de Vries, who is senior researcher on urban forestry and team leader for the European Forest Institute. Rick also has multiple roles, so he's also taking care of making sure that the online participants can actually hear us. So I will start with Alberto, so he can provide us his perspective. Alberto.
Good morning. So it is my pleasure to address you all today at this final conference of REGREEN and Clearing House. So I will start with the, let's say, origin, so the call under which these projects were funded. And as we heard already this morning, it was an Horizon 2020 call for proposal launched in 2018. And it was focused on strengthening international cooperation on sustainable urbanization, nature-based solution for restoration and rehabilitation of urban ecosystems. So today I would like to provide an overview of how the main progress and achievements of the projects are in line with what were the call's requirements, and also how the results are relevant and have potential to provide contribution to related policies and progress in the field. So the main request of the topic was indeed to address the unsustainable and non-resilient urbanization patterns that have caused fragmentation, depletion, destruction of habitats, biodiversity loss, and the degradation of ecosystem and ecosystem services. And so the aim was to study ways how to enhance ecosystem resilience, adaptive capacity in urban areas to cope with the effects of climate and global changes. So to enable ecosystem to deliver their services and to improve the quality health in cities. So in this context, projects were expected also to develop models, tools, guidelines to enable the design, implementation, and monitoring of nature-based solutions. And additionally, the projects were required to review and capitalize upon the existing experience and good practices, both in Europe and in China. And also important was to raise awareness and educate citizens about the benefit of nature-based solution for the well-being. Also, the collaboration between Europe and China was a very important aspect because indeed, as we heard, this call was a part of the EU-China flagship initiative on environment and sustainable urbanization to promote research and innovation cooperation. So the project has successfully addressed these goals, and the results can provide valuable contribution also to the policies. So REGREEN focused on generating evidence on how nature-based solution can be integrated into urban planning to address urban challenges, such as climate change, resilience, public health, and social inclusion. And the project emphasized the importance of improved urban governance and public and private participation to integrate ecosystem services and biodiversity. And through co-creation with different stakeholders, also REGREEN has contributed to the long-term sustainability of MBS. And the models, tools, and guidelines that the project has developed. I mentioned, for example, the City Explorer Toolkit and the NBS Business Investment and Decision Support Tool have the potential to contribute to the improvement in design, planning, and implementation of MBS, especially in urban areas. Then Clearing House focused on the specific type of MBS that is the urban forest MBS. And the project has made significant contribution to the understanding of this type of MBS in the European and Chinese context. So on one hand, the project studied how urban forests can provide benefits to biodiversity in urban areas by providing habitats to a wide range of species. And on the other hand, how urban forests can provide benefit to human health. And Clearing House has also developed innovative tools and methodologies, as well as guidelines that can be used to support the implementation of urban forest NBS. So the project also has successfully engaged stakeholders, promote implementation of MBS through guidelines for local authorities and civil organizations. And the collaboration between Europe and China has provided an added value, as this knowledge exchange has allowed to find similarities and differences in the approach to NBS. So both projects have achieved progress in their respective areas, and this by advancing the understanding of urban drivers and pressures, by developing models for the quantification of ecosystem services from nature-based solutions, exploring the impacts of NBS interventions in Europe and China, and implementing various tools and methodologies for stakeholder engagement, for awareness raising. And also the projects have made a significant contribution to the scientific community with the publication of several academic articles. So I would like also to mention the excellent work that the projects have done for training and awareness raising, not only to the scientific community and policymakers, but also to citizens and schools. For example, with the educational toolkit targeted to children, such as the REGREEN's educational learning platform Greenopolis, or Clearing House's educational package City of Trees. And so the results of the project are valuable also for policymakers and practitioners, and this is important, as we heard also from the previous presentations this morning. And the evidence generated by the project can inform the urban planning processes and contribute to the development of sustainable and resilient cities. And this is important to contribute to different policies for the transition to greener, more resilient and sustainable cities, and also for policies such as the EU 2030 biodiversity strategy to which NBS can provide a valuable contribution, also to the mission adaptation that we heard previously this morning, or to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals related to sustainable cities and communities. And I would like also to highlight the fact that the project have demonstrated the added value of international cooperation between Europe and China. And this collaboration has provided mutual benefits and allowed for the exchange of knowledge, experience, and good practices between Europe and China. And it has also generated a better understanding of the similarities, differences, and this has fostered mutual learning. So in conclusion, I would like to say that the results that have been developed and the models, tools, the guidelines are valuable assets for different stakeholders. And it is important now that in order to assure impact, these results are considered and used for the progress in the field of sustainable urbanization, and therefore also contributing to policies. So I would like to congratulate the projects for the result and the progress they have made. And this despite the difficulties that were encountered during the first phase of the project, such as with the restriction faced during the COVID lockdowns, or as we heard, with the misalignment in the timing of the funding between the European and Chinese granting authorities. That's my message to you, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alberto, for your reflections on the contributions of the projects. And as you mentioned, it's important that these projects have impact on the sustainable and nature-based activities in the cities. So maybe we can hear then more from Marianne on what we achieved during these years for REGREEN.
Thank you very much, and very warm welcome to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with Clearing House, and thank you very much, Alberto. Let's see if I can get this working. So REGREEN is about fostering nature-based solutions for both an equitable, healthy, and green urban transition in both Europe and China. And we work through 20 partners in China and Europe to combine research and practice, to advance knowledge and evidence, to develop and test tools and guidelines, to identify good investment models that can really enhance the uptake and investment in NBS, and to promote awareness. And a very important part of REGREEN is the urban living labs. There are 6 of them, 3 in Europe, 3 in China, Aarhus in Denmark, Paris region in France, and Velika Gorica in Croatia, just outside Zagreb. And in China, the big cities of Beijing, Shanghai, and Ningbo. And a strength, I think, in REGREEN has been this very close integration between researchers and practitioners, and that has really been facilitated by a very equal and full partnership in the consortium. Researchers benefit from the understanding on on-the-ground challenges, while the urban living labs, they can build the capacity and insights, and at the same time co-create with researchers and validate our approaches, improving findings. But last but not least, very importantly, has been the teaching, the learning, the training in between urban living labs and between China and Europe. As you see here on the slide, we've worked across different challenges that NBS can help alleviate. So REGREEN really looks at the multiple benefits of NBS. And we started off by collating experience and best practice on NBS from Europe, and that has resulted in some fact sheets you can find out in the marketplace. It's translated into Chinese as well, with an emphasis on the good practices, barriers, and lessons learned. And that's the hope that that can also help in the adaptation mission and the nature restoration law, that this can get spread out. Another important part of the knowledge and evidence that we've worked with in REGREEN is typology for green infrastructure and NBS, where we evaluate 47 NBS categories against 11 urban challenges. So we have synthesized the evidence on this, and it's a quick reference tool to aid planning and design of urban NBS. And yes, it provides a synthesis of evidence that can be really, really useful for cities starting, but also for researchers to have a good screening base. A central part of REGREEN, we have got a lot of key and strengths here, but those are the ones I want to focus on, are the ecosystem models. I think that almost no other urban projects have created new models, and we've created 7 of them. You can hear about 6 of them this afternoon downstairs at 3 o'clock. And so these models cover air pollution, cooling, water quality, water flow, noise mitigation, biodiversity, and even education potential. And then very much linked to the modeling and mapping of ecosystem services and benefits from NBS, we have quantified benefits and values from NBS and the services using a mixed methods approach. That has included working with causal loop diagrams to look at the link between street trees and mental health. It has involved photo elicitation with residents in the European ULLs to evoke information, feelings, and memories. It has involved conducting surveys in parks in the European ULLs using ecological momentary assessment, assessing self-reported, how do you feel now? How did you feel generally? We have also worked with deliberative valuation with citizens in both Beijing and the 3 European ULLs, looking at NBS preferences, willingness to pay at different levels of scenarios. And last but not least, we are working with the quantification in monetary terms as well on the benefits of NBS. And here is an example of the value of risk of reduced heat mortality. And you can hear about that tomorrow in this room. In addition to all this evidence and knowledge, the awareness is really fundamental. And in terms of the governance and planning aspects, the enablers that we found for innovative NBS policies require really the existence of a policy champion or entrepreneur within the local authority that has the ability to influence both policy and implementation. But it also requires openness to work across levels and silos and to collaborate with stakeholders, especially those that use and maintain urban green space. And as you'll see out in the marketplace, we've got this map on the floor. It's an interactive walkable floor map that has been used in policy workshops, and they have been instrumental to provide opportunities for dialogue and social interaction. And it really helps thinking outside current limitations and making the improbable possible. Another important part of the awareness and in governance and education is a number of flexible education tools that we have created with teacher guidelines. And the aim here has been to engage children in explorative, participatory, and action-oriented approaches to nature-based learning and NBS in their cities and their local areas. And we found in all the European living labs that students respond very well to approaches that allow exploration, discovery, and action. But tools in themselves are not enough, and there are no quick fixes, especially talking about the education system. There's an ongoing need to engage with schools and teachers to promote and support this experiential and participatory approach to nature-based learning. But there's also a need for political support at both local and national level to create that supportive educational policy to give the right frames. In terms of evidence and toolkits, I want to highlight 3. You can talk to us more out in the marketplace. One I would like to highlight here is a guide on how to create high-quality urban nature when you depave. So you take away the sealed surfaces, but what do you do then? And this is both in French and English. We also have a very rich training material for technicians, both planners and implementers, including slides and resources. And we have an interactive web-based tool to help cities plan locations where NBS give a maximum benefit to city residents against different urban challenges, and it's called the City Explorer Toolkit. In terms of the business models, it's always a bit funny to talk about business when it's basically about collective goods. But by business model, we think about how can we induce more activity in this field. There's not enough going around. And we have identified 3 distinct models. One is a public-private driven model, and especially in the Aarhus Urban Living Lab, they are working a lot with that in partnership with the private sector. But there's a commercially driven consultancy model, a business-to-business model, and then also a citizen-driven model where it's, for instance, crowdfunding to enable the implementation of collective goods. Our digital platform with a decision support tool is very much a target-oriented approach, be you a planner or a citizen or a financer, and it's deliberately made simple and intuitive to use and integrates a lot of the evidence and tools and guidelines of REGREEN. And now here to the end, I would just like to focus on a few of, well, all this has to have an impact on the ground. And we kind of discussed what have to date been some major examples of impact. Well, REGREEN developed this science-based tool to identify areas for depavement and guidance on how to create high-quality NBS, that guidance you saw just before. And the Paris region took that opportunity to turn this research into a political objective. And that has led to the creation of a Île-de-France Nature agency that started this year that provides 145 cities in the region with funding for NBS and depavement. And they have a very ambitious target to depave 5,000 hectares. And I think that fits very nicely into the nature restoration law target of increasing green urban space. We've worked, so our development of these interactive walkable floor maps, they have been used in decision-making and in schools in our European urban living labs, and we provided ebooks and guidance on how other cities can work with this. It's an extremely successful tool that has been amazing for integrating across REGREEN. Another example is from Velika Gorica in Croatia. When they first saw this heat map, you can see here, produced by REGREEN, that shows a difference in temperature between the built-up area and the nature areas, that got them thinking. And so that kickstarted a process towards changing the existing spatial planning, and so that now they have a requirement of 35% green space on new development plots compared to 20% before. And the city is also developing the first strategy of green infrastructure that is on debate this Friday in the City Council. And if this is adopted, well, all the measures and guidelines also coming from REGREEN will have a tangible impact in Velika Gorica. And in Denmark, in Aarhus municipality, the modeling of ecosystem services and the NBS scenarios has led the municipality to revise the land use planning in order to improve surface water quality. So we have a scenario that by afforesting in a catchment area, what impact does that have on the water quality in the streams? So they use this deliberately of finding out in what areas should we really push for afforestation and what areas should we really reduce our plans for urban development. And finally, our recently submitted report on recommended target values for urban green and blue space, I think will be a timely and very useful input to both the EC and the EA and other agencies in providing guidance to member states on how to set urban target values for increasing green infrastructure under the nature restoration law. And this is my last slide. So to conclude, with 17 European and 4 Chinese partners, we are all very proud and happy to be hosting this final event together with the Clearing House project. And we hope that our journey can be of inspiration and a resource for practitioners and researchers alike, along with policymakers in both China and Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marianne, also for highlighting how important is the role of the urban living labs actually to implement on ground the research outcomes. So we will continue with the presentation from the Professor Bin Zhao online. So we can continue with the scientific outcomes from the REGREEN project in China. Professor Bin Zhao, can you hear us? So please use your headset, as there will be a simultaneous translation during this presentation. All right. So, Professor Bin Zhao, the floor is yours.
好的。大家能看到我的屏幕吗？各位在欧洲的朋友们，早上好。在中国的朋友们，晚上好。首先的话，我要特别感谢奥胡斯大学的马尔安娜博士，她的邀请使我有幸参加这次中欧 REGREEN 会议。我们都清楚地记得，新冠疫情期间线上会议已经成为我们中欧合作者主要的交流方式。今天呢，也是一次线上线下的混合会议，就仿佛让我感觉到回到了几年前我们共同在线上会议中讨论和申请项目的那个美好时光。我们中欧项目的合作呢，从一开始就基于共同的研究目标、内容和主题。欧洲的项目在2018年底已经获得了批准，但那个时候我们并没有获得中国科技部的项目支持。我们中方的项目呢，真正获得资助是在2021年10月，也就是说在2019年和2020年2年间，我们中方的团队在尚未获得项目支持的情况下，依然坚定地支持欧洲合作伙伴，积极参加与项目相关的一些规划工作，特别是那些涉及到中方的任务。正是我们这份坚持和努力，使得欧方的项目能够在2019年顺利的启动。而在后来，中方申请中国科技部的项目当中呢，欧方合作者也给予了最充足、最无私的支持。我相信这种相互支持一定是源于我们从2018年开始，中欧双方的合作伙伴在项目申请过程中建立起的深厚信任。坦率地说2020年新冠疫情的到来，对我们合作的确带来了一些挑战。原本计划的互访工作受阻，但我们仍然保持了密切且有效的沟通。从2018年以来呢，我们多次参与了欧方项目的例会，但由于我们双方的任务不同，我们没有那么多时间参与所有的例会。从中方项目立项以来呢，我们已经从多个维度开展了国际合作与交流。左边的这张图是2022年3月23日，欧方项目组的成员线上参加我们中方的项目启动会。还有右边，这是2022年4月28日，生态系统服务的价值评估、资源与数据共享网络研讨会。在人才联合培养方面，最突出的是项目组联合培养了两名博士研究生，现在已顺利毕业。虽然疫情中出国交流不便，我们还是克服困难，派出了5万本同学前往德国赫姆赫斯环境研究中心进行了为期1年的联合培养。今年的夏天，5万本同学已经以优异的成绩获得了复旦大学博士学位。他的优秀表现呢，也获得了奥胡斯大学的青睐，拿到了去奥胡斯大学继续进行博士后研究的机会。我相信他今天也参加了这个会议。此外，清华大学的骆翔宇同学本来也是计划前往奥胡斯大学进行为期1年的联合培养的， 因为疫情耽搁了，联合培养过程改为线上，目前他也顺利毕业，在四川省林草局入职。这是我们项目研究中的一些代表性成果。项目探索之初我们就发现缺乏项目设定中的中欧6个城市现实实验室的长时间系列土地覆盖产品，所以就决定了先完成这个工作。项目由欧方研究人员主导，复旦大学的吴万本和清华大学的骆翔宇，也就是我刚才提到的2名博士生参加。这个研究结合开源的土地覆盖、土地利用数据集以及 Landsite 系列数据产品，开发了基于谷歌地球云平台的全自动土地覆盖的制图框架。此外，在这个工作的基础上呢，也就是多实项的城市土地覆盖观测基础上，我们进一步开展了多情景下中欧6个城市现实实验室的城市土地覆盖及多种生态系统服务评估的研究。在这些研究的基础上，我们还合作发表了多篇文章。这个列表呢，应该不是一个完全的版本，只是我这里暂时统计的。2022年年底，中国解除了疫情封控，欧方项目成员积极寻求访华的机会，陆陆续续的派遣了研究人员到中国进行项目交流与合作。2023年5月，欧方项目课题7的负责人安德斯访问清华大学地球系统科学系，主要是为了推动基于自然解决方案的理论与实践方面的交流。2023年6月，欧方项目课题8的项目组成员 Richard 访华，他访问了中方所有参与的城市和单位，包括北京、上海和宁波，还专门去研究地进行了考察。右边这张照片呢，就是 Richard 参观上海红树林基地的照片。这是刚刚过去的10月，我们在宁波召开的中欧国际会议，这是中欧合作项目组众多成员第一次真正的线下见面，同时也让欧方更多的了解了中国的研究。我相信这样的交流呢，一定会为我们未来的合作奠定更加坚实的基础。在欧方项目即将解体之际我们再一次回顾一下有关中欧合作的必要性的问题是很有价值的。首先呢，中国和欧洲的城市有很多共同之处，比如说历史悠久、布局紧凑、人口稠密等等。当然也同时面临着很多共同的挑战，比如说城市内涝高温城市生物多样性、绿地和自然水体丧失等等。另外呢，我们也有许多的不同，包括不同的文化历史、社会挑战、气候、治理体系和经济与社会的结构，还有现有与过去的不同环境政策的优先事项，这都可以产生不同城市间对可持续发展问题进行相互借鉴的知识。同时，我们双方的研究呢，还有极大的互补性。一方面，中国可以学习欧洲在 NBS 应用方面的成功经验和方法，比如说促进公众参与的方法、项目收益评估的方法、项目的商业化以及成果的业务孵化等方面另外一方面呢，欧洲合作伙伴也可以向中国学习一些，比如说可持续城镇化方面的经验和成果，这就包括生态文明建设的指导方针、人与自然和谐共生的哲学，还有大规模实施海绵城市和城市生态修复、生态修补当中积累了许多的经验，特别是我们中国实实在在在践行碳中和政策当中所产生的实际效果，也是与 NBS 不谋而合的，这是我感到特别欣慰的地方。下面我举几个例子来说明。在项目执行当中呢，我们复旦大学目前正在开展的一个工作，也是非常具有代表性和科普性的活动，那就是在临港开展红树林种植活动。上海并非红树的自然分布区，这个工作有一些颠覆性的思考。我们的具体方案呢，是在人工设施的帮助下培育耐寒品种的红树林。 这是对未来气候变化的一种预案布局，最终是为了维持海岸生态系统的健康。这是一种在人工技术帮助下，最终依靠自然的力量来获得可持续性的经济社会和环境的效益，充分体现了 NBS 的关键方面。基于这个方案呢，我们在大学课堂、中学课堂也开展了相应的体验活动，一个是走进红树林暑期行知课程，一个是超越自然智慧、解锁基于自然的解决方案的课程。活动当中，我们尝试将 NBS 框架具象化，并融入STEM 教育理念当中，构建我们在项目中所提出的 STEAM 教育新框架，提高中学生理解生态学相关政策的能力。大家注意啊，我们这里的 STEAM 比传统的 STEM 多一个 E， 这里的 E 呢，就是指的生态学。项目的另一个团队，中国科学院城市环境研究所，他们调查了在中国东海岸选定的海绵试点城市宁波。这里呢已经进行了好几年的实践工作。他们的研究采用深入的半结构化访谈进行，最后剖析了 NBS 以建成基础设施的过去的经验、当前的挑战以及未来的发展，特别是通过对公众的看法、学习渠道以及进一步参与的机会进行详细调查，提升了公众对可持续性的雨水管理设施的认知和参与度，这也是非常好的 NBS 实践。同时呢，我们还和欧方共同构建了关于基于自然解决方案的博客分享，这是在清华大学的城市生活多样性和生态系统服务微信公众号上，我们有同步更新的中欧 REGREEN 项目的专栏。好的，我的报告就到这里，谢谢你的关注。
Thank you very much, Professor Binjao, for this overview of the activities from REGREEN. So then we will continue for now with Professor Dr. Rick de Vries and provide an overview of the Clearing House project.
Thank you, Elena. Great to see you all here. It has been a long journey, literally for some of you. I think I should definitely welcome the Hong Kong and Chinese delegation to Brussels. So I'm really glad that we have, I don't know, about 10 people from China and 2 from Hong Kong. Sorry, I did not make the calculation. So we have colleagues here from the Chinese Academy of Forestry, the Beijing Forest University, the Guangzhou Institute for Forestry and Landscape Architecture, and the Hong Kong University, and which one I forgot? Sorry, I think I forgot one organization. Anyway, very welcome to Brussels. But we also have people from Mexico City and Belo Horizonte in Brazil. We also have been working very nicely with you to do some exchange of material and ideas between the continents. So we chose, when we were writing the proposal, we chose to really focus on urban forests and urban trees. Well, trees are existing already for a long time in our cities. If you go back to the Roman Empire, there were already trees in the cities being planted there for aesthetic reasons or for providing food. And it's only quite recent that this approach of, or the importance of urban trees and urban forests for ecosystem services, and later on trees as nature-based solutions, has become more important. So that was the starting point for Clearing House. How to facilitate and create change in policy and practice to facilitate the role of urban trees and urban forests as a nature-based solution. So I will not explain you the long name behind the title, but I'm very grateful to all the 26 partners we have in Clearing House, 20 from Europe, 6 from China, representing 11 countries. And well, in the end, as I said, Clearing House will have been working or having activities in 4 continents of the globe. So I'm also very grateful to my colleagues at the Chinese Academy of Forestry for the work that they have been doing as coordinators of the Chinese side. I feel a little bit embarrassed to present, or to only be able to present really a very small amount of the things that we have been doing in Clearing House. And I've tried to outline a little bit every partner and the work of every partner, but I'm definitely not able to present all the things we have been doing and to present all the things all the partners have been doing. So we have been working in Europe and China, as explained, Beijing, Hubei, Guangzhou, Xiamen, Hong Kong, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen at the Chinese side. And in Europe, going south to north, Barcelona, here in Brussels, as you can see tomorrow also, in Gelsenkirchen in the Ruhr area, Leipzig, and then in the east in Krakow. As I said, I will only briefly touching upon some of the Clearing House outputs. Some of them will be discussed further later on. And we started with a Sino-European literature review, a very nice overview of, at that moment, 422 records of papers, scientific papers, that we identified as discussing urban forests and urban trees for the ecosystem services and the nature-based solutions they provided or provide. Very interesting, also a bit more, I would say, oriented towards practitioners, is the 22 case histories we have on network nature. So 6 of them are from China and 16 are from Europe. And I take the opportunity also to thank the people from Network Nature, because I think both from REGREEN and Clearing House, we have been very much working a lot with Network Nature and the opportunities they provided through the task forces. So the next slide is not coming up. I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Well, a bit in parallel with what REGREEN has been doing, also we have been developing a new typology for urban forests as nature-based solutions. Mainly the colleagues in Berlin and Humboldt University have been working on this. And very innovative for this typology is that it's integrating all the different approaches to typologies that have been existing before. So before, in more traditional typologies, you have one typology based on the use of urban forest, another one based on the species, another one based on the function or the form, and this one is really integrating the typology. I'm sorry I cannot explain it more into detail, but it's really interesting, the work. So Sebastian can explain you more if you're interested. So also more to come tomorrow is about comparing how Europeans and Chinese see urban trees and urban forests and the ecosystem services and the ecosystem services they provide. I was a bit surprised to see that the differences are not so outspoken. Mainly for ecosystem services, there are differences, but both in Europe and China, urban trees and urban forests are seen as quite important and quite interesting to a lot of the population. And when speaking to people who are sitting in cities, maybe it should also be part of the urban greening plans in the future. People who are in greening departments, they receive a lot of complaints about trees and the leaves and all the dirt and whatever. But if we now really do this systematic survey, I would say only 10% of the people are really complaining about trees, and 90% of the people in general are really happy with the trees in the cities. So more to come on this tomorrow in the session on social aspects. I'm very proud that we have our education package now in 8 languages. It's about, well, the name is City of Trees, but very innovative, in my opinion, is the way the package is working. It's not, I would say, it's not about learning about trees or learning about nature, but it's learning with nature. The colleagues at Bouche Plus here in Belgium, they have been really developing this package with the idea you can learn with nature. For instance, even topics like language or physical activity. It's not only about just learning about nature, about a tree and what a tree can do, but a tree can also help you really to learn language, to be more physically active, and so on. So nicely also linking to this STEAM approach that was discussed before. Next, well, really more or less fresh or still to come are the 4 guidelines that we have been developing. The draft versions are available for consultation on the tables. So these guidelines are really trying to translate what we have been learning into a practitioner and politician-oriented language, including cases and so on. And it's only around 30 pages, so it's not, how to say, not taking a lot of time to read, although I was just told the other day the average politician is only reading 1 page. So maybe, well, we have a solution for that. We have 1 or 2 page summary. I think, Capucine, I don't know where you are, but you have brought 100 copies of this very short summary of the guidelines. So they're also for you somewhere around here. So take them, and maybe take them with you to your local politician, and he can or she can then read these 1 or 2 pages about why he or she should work with trees in the city. Very fresh, very new, and I cannot explain it into detail for time reasons, but it's a what we call the SEC Hub. It's visualizing some of the data that we have been generating about the trees, about connectivity to trees, about how trees are situated in our 4 or 5 case study cities in Europe, but also explaining the story behind the indicators, the story behind the data. So it's really fresh, so just have a look if you want, and I think this will be further discussed later on too. And also here, I've already been thinking when Benjamin Casper was discussing the challenges for the urban greening plans, I definitely see some future in the urban greening plans using this tool, but also the other tool, the Special Impact Assessment and Classification tool, also developed by the colleagues at Humboldt in Berlin. This is a QGIS plugin, and it's really able to generate all kind of metrics and indicators. And the tool has been developed to be really in line with needs from the IUCN Urban Nature Index. So it has been developed in close relationship with the IUCN colleagues, Dorsa and others in Geneva. So this one we are doing some final testing, but it will be online in our repositories later on. Some of the outcomes in China, and first of all, these slides should not have been presented by myself, but by my Chinese counterpart, I would say, Professor Wang Cheng, who was the coordinator at the Chinese Academy of Forestry of the Clearing House project. Very unfortunate, Professor Wang could not travel for personal reasons this week, but still, I'm bringing you a bit of flavor of what the Clearing House has been doing in China. So, well, as Mariana was also referring before, we also had the challenges with the Chinese funding and the COVID, of course. But still, we have some nice outcomes. So there was a co-design workshop between colleagues in China and Europe in full pandemic in April 2021. We had, and then in 23, we were really gearing up. So you see on the left a picture from the Science Policy Practice Symposium that we had in Guangzhou. Thank you once more to the colleagues in Guangzhou for hosting this very nice symposium. And also in Hong Kong, well, we were supposed to visit some green space. But there was first a typhoon and then the most massive flooding in Hong Kong exactly at the time we were there. So it was a very nice illustration why we need to have more trees in the city. But unfortunately, we could not do all the field visits and so on. But and on the right, you see an interview that I've been doing, but also a colleague Rafa from the University of Bari has been interviewed for the Guangzhou television about our visit and about the work and about our appreciation of the work that Chinese colleagues in Guangzhou are doing related to urban forests and urban trees. Next week, we will have a collaboration between the city of Haikou in South China and the city of Istanbul. Well, I've already mentioned the survey between Europe and China. There has been also a comparative analysis between Europe and China. And our Chinese colleagues are also, have also been developing a citizen science app to map the tree health and to evaluate green spaces by citizens in China. 24 scientific articles have been published, and I'm really impressed by this number. 24 scientific articles have already been published, and more are coming, I know, with one or more Chinese clearinghouse participants. And finally, the colleagues from the Guangzhou Institute of Forestry and Landscape Architecture have been registering a patent for a method for detecting energy saving through green roofs. I was very impressed we have visited the laboratory by all the measurements that have been done on this kind of installations of green roofs in China. So, well, if you want to still follow us on social media, we will not stop after today or tomorrow. This is still the link here. So with this, I would also like to thank you. Also, thank you, REGREEN partners, for this nice opportunity to organize all this together. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Rick. It was also very inspiring to see what you have worked during the past years on Clearing House. So we are very much on time, and I would like maybe to get a couple of questions from the audience about our speakers, whether on stage or Professor Binja online. So please raise your hands. Yes, if you could please introduce yourself while you are making the question, and for whom is the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice presentation. Thank you very much, Jerry Lee Wilkes from EFI Biocities Facility. I have a question to Rick. You were saying that you were in a typhoon in China and that trees are needed. And in Switzerland, there have been a discussion that because of these winds, trees will be prohibited, for example. One person said it to me just very, to wrap the discussion. So what do you think, because these are challenges also that cities will face, how do you think that we can deal with this in the future?
Thank you, Jerry Lee. Yeah, that's a very interesting question and a very good starting point for the next project, I think. No, it's very relevant. I mean, a couple of weeks ago we had the big storm here, and very unfortunate in my own city, Ghent, 2 people died. And I think, yeah, it's, how to say, it's a very complex item, and we should not be underestimate the risk of trees on the one hand. I mean, I was making this nice comment about 90% of the people love trees. But on the other hand, there's a risk that we are too optimists, I think, and not taking all the risks into account. On the other hand, I think lots of the tree damage is well, you can see it everywhere. If you go here in Brussels or in my own city, Ghent, or I have also seen it in Hong Kong, but everywhere you see that there's not enough respect for trees. Cars are just being parked on the roofs and on the roads and so on. I have not explained it to this audience, I think. But one of the important items is that there's still a lot of awareness raising to be done to practitioners, but not only tree managers or green space managers, but also other people working in the public space, that trees. Well, I would make now a very bold one-liner. Trees are good, but we have to care, of course, for the trees.
I'd like to add also from Barcelona, I talked to people in the environment management, and where they monitor trees, and they visit each single tree every second year at least, and they have a system of, when people phone in with complaints, they register it, and when they see there's an increase in complaints, they go out and check what is the problem. And that's actually a safety for politicians to continue driving forest cover. And I think Barcelona is at 30%, and they want to move it to 35%, and also making it very biodiverse and finding out what species fit best where. So as Rick is saying about understanding the risk, but also how to handle and monitor it, and that I think is something we all need to start doing in cities.
Great. Thank you very much, both. Sally, you have a question.
Yes, I'm Sally Anderson from Aarhus University in Denmark. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. You spoke about the learning potential of trees, trees as learning or as teachers in a way. And we've been working on that in REGREEN with regard to children, but I'm thinking if we're going to have more trees in cities, are the trees going to be able to educate city planners, politicians, and architects as well about how to build with trees in the city? So it's not just trees as an addition to what we've already got, but how do we build cities that afford trees? Are you working? I'm just wondering if you've been working on that, because we hear about the benefits of the health and the well-being, but I'm wondering about what can trees or the potential of more trees in cities teach architects and city planners about how to live cities with trees or to build cities with trees. So I think you probably understood.
Thank you, Sally. I assume this is a question to me. Yeah, there's the question is, do we plan to work on it, I think, or have we been working on it? Before I go to the commercial, I think there's an interesting example there is, well, I think he's joining online, but my colleague Alan Simpson from Leeds Beckett University in the UK, he in the 70s or 60s, the UK has been building lots of these new towns. And so in some of these new towns, instead of starting with the roads or starting with building the houses, they started with planting the trees. So the green infrastructure, which usually is coming as the last phase of a development, in this development was the first thing they did. And I think that's a very smart idea, also because the trees need the time to grow to deliver the ecosystem services. But also, yeah, you're building the network of the trees before you build everything else. Of course, there's also a risk that the trees are being damaged by machinery and so on. But yeah, and as I said, I will come to the commercial. At EFI, we launched a couple of months ago, we launched the BioCities facility. And the idea there is really to see how we can work with trees and development and architecture in a more integrated way. Also, for instance, inspired by the work by Stefano Boeri from Milano, the vertical forest and so on. So yeah, I think definitely more work is to be done there, and will be done. Thank you.
So we'll have one more question.
Hello, Sarah Millican, University of Greenwich, London, UK. Thank you for your presentations. Question for both projects really is about what sort of indicators you have put in place to evaluate in the short term the impact of your projects and then monitor it going forward. How will you demonstrate that the money received from the EU was money well spent? Thank you.
Thank you for that very good question. Well, one thing, we are documenting what we're doing and working so closely together with the urban living labs that what we do in terms of research is also something that is needed. And if it's not needed, they challenge us and we challenge them back. In that way, we move ahead. And we have described that co-creation work that has been done in a report. And then, of course, we report on everything we do and the outputs, but we are always thinking very much about the impact it has. We haven't got any budget to demonstrate in our project, so we don't have that to measure. But what the indicators that we go by, not that we have kind of set in the beginning, is that we will go by those indicators. It's really about what impact does it have on policy and practice in the living labs. And I think that's the most important part. And then the other thing is how do we ensure the legacy of the project, of the tools, methods, guidelines, insights, knowledge, And there we have created the Zenodo community with the 4 connexes, interlays, Clearing House and REGREEN, and we have our own Zenodo community. So that's one where we upload posters, data sets, deliverables, papers. They need to be open access. You have to upload the full thing so that we have this transparency, but especially the legacy. And another thing I think, for me, an indicator is to make the output that we've done available in the languages that we want it out to. So for instance, this guidance book on depavement and identifying potential areas for depaving, that was a French deliverable that our partners, Institut Paris Région, then had laid out in French, and we now have it in English, and we want to have it in Danish and Croatian, because I think that is what really pushes things out, not to keep it in an English language. So I don't know if that satisfies you, but that's how we've been working very much on how to ensure that this has impact.
Great. Would you also like a quick reflection on that?
Yeah, I don't have to add a lot to this. Yeah. Also, maybe a comment to the European Commission. It was a bit a pity that we didn't have the money to invest really on the ground through the projects, I think. It should not have been a lot of money, but maybe 100,000 euros in total for the city could have made a difference anyway. No, but yeah, it's a challenge to really show the impact. Although I think we did, well, a couple of the webinars we did, I think in total also, well, sorry, I'm only focusing on Clearing House, but I think we reached more than a couple of thousands people through the different webinars and so on, and I'm quite sure that this will have an impact, yeah. Elena, there are some questions in the online forum, I think.
Yes, so maybe we can get one question online, and then we have a quick one sentence from Alberto, a quick reflection, and then we can move to the next part. So, Joe, would you like to read out the question?
Thank you. Yeah, so we have a participant online who wants to know, as a private business owner and a private citizen in China, how can they help raise awareness of regreening and nature-based solutions?
Professor Binjak, can you also hear us? So how we can raise the impact, raise awareness and maximize the impact of the project outcomes in China.
因为 NBS 这个概念嘛，在中国来说，应该还是刚刚进入到这个传播的这种领域，就是大多数人呢还不是特别清楚，所以我作为一个大学的老师呢，我更多的是关注的是怎么样来让从孩子们开始做起，至于和企业的这种联系呢，说实话我还真的不是特别的清楚，就是和企业之间如何打交道，把这个概念的话灌输给他们。
Right. Thank you very much. Marianne, would you like also to...
Well, I can say that what we've done in REGREEN, we've done a number of ideation and accelerator program events in the living labs in Europe, and that's been extremely beneficial. So, for instance, bringing in local authorities and private businesses, practitioners together in one room, increase the awareness and understanding on what is NBS in an urban context, and how can we work together, how can we enhance the take-up and especially the funding. Does it all have to come from the local authority? What are other sources? What kind of partnerships can be set up? And that really creates this ecosystem we want to get growing. We just have to water it a bit more. So my hope is that this is also going to continue. And I think you can talk to our colleagues, Josip Bieber from ZES in Croatia and Gordana Kranjaja from Velika Gorica on how they work with that. And they've been a lot on television, on radio, and it's amazing to see in Croatia how that hub is growing just by a few inputs, but by very dedicated people.
Right. So unfortunately, we need to move forward. So Alberto, one final reflection on this session from your side.
So, well, thank you. I thank you, Marianne, Rick, and Professor Binzau for the overview of the results of the projects, and they show how these results, the work done, goes towards the implementation and the contribution to implement and raise awareness of NBS. Also, this presentation have fostered a good discussion, and so we see that there's a lot to do in this field, and the result achieved by the project can contribute to this, but it's important that also it's built up on the results. So that's basically what I also encourage with the fact that it's important to ensure that these results and the work is further sorry, I missed the word, but is used for future developments.
Great. So I would like to thank you all very much for all your inputs, and of course Professor Binzau, who was online. So a round of applause for all our speakers and then all the insights. Thank you very much. So for the next step, since we are all here, we would like to have a group picture for the final conference. So I'm not sure if it is a good idea to be here on stage or outside, since the weather is also quite well in the courtyard. And then we will have lunch, and after lunch we will continue with one more session here on the plenary. And after we'll have the marketplace. All right, so please, everyone, if you can gather in the courtyard to take the picture, the group picture, and then we'll move with the lunch.
Recording stopped.